When I was first asked to do this, I had my arm twisted behind my back, and I kind of said, grand. I was expecting maybe a half dozen hippie guys like myself turn up, and it would be easy, but to have a crowd like 200 people it's absolutely fantastic. And the person that asked me to do it, or just getting me to do it, I thought it was quite strange, because the first thing I started doing in biological farming is I actually started doing nothing. And the more time I spent doing nothing, I actually realised I could get away with doing less and less. And then I kind of wondered what was after the last 10 years that I worked so hard and I didn't achieve an awful lot. But when you start doing nothing and it starts being successful, you try and keep cutting the amount of work you actually do. So I probably changed from a couple of years ago. I was running a really intensive bee farm, indoor feedlot system for some of the animals, maybe running up in 5-6 livestock units per hectare, so a really intensive farm. It's a medium-sized farm, and there's 66% of it leased. Now, I'll probably come back to that because that's a very important point in this whole biological farming. The current stocking rate for the last 2 to 3 years are something around 3 livestock units per hectare, 2.8, and it's a very dry limestone farm. It's only maybe 2 inches of soil over some of the land, but we're in a high rainfall area, maybe 1,100 mils per year. So even though we're very dry, we do get kind of wet soils, but a couple of dry days and we're back to going again. The timeline of my changes, I commenced farming in 2004, just farmed by the book till 2010, first till longer. I purchased a moor direct drill in 2010, so I had some inclination. There was something, it was probably actually out of laziness because I didn't like picking stones, so if you could actually receive land without work, it was a great way of working. So maybe it had sown a seed for something to happen later on. Now in 2015 I had a personal health issue. I don't have as much energy as I used to have, a blood condition. So it gave me time to reevaluate the direction of where I was and what I was doing, maybe in life, farming, the whole shebang. So it probably gave me a different perspective on everything that happened, or what I was going to do. In 2016, for some reason I saw an advert for Groundswell, and it was the first year of Groundswell in the UK. It's a no-till ag show, conventional or conservation agriculture show, and I went to that. It was an absolute breath of fresh air, I thought. And I came home from that and I heard a couple of Irish voices there, and I remember emailing one of the Irish guys I know and said, how come we don't have something similar in Ireland? And he said, we do, we've got BASE. So I joined BASE and met up with more like-minded people. Go on to 2018, joined the Danner group, or was asked to join the Danner group. I was pretty sure it wouldn't get anywhere, and pretty surprised we actually got funding, and here we are today. Probably one of my targets was there at the bottom, to reduce chemicals as low as practically possible while maintaining, and that's the most important point, I want to maintain my stocking rates, my growth rates, my outputs, and my financial performance of the farm using minimal inputs. Now that's probably most people's objective anyway in farming, try and grow as much or as little as possible. What I would say, the system I have designed for myself over the last 3 or 4 years, it's not a complex system, anyone can do it. My great-grandfather 70 years ago, he never left the county he lived in. He had on Twitter, and he was probably one of the best biological farmers there was. Like, he just didn't know any different. So we're just basically going back to where we were all those years ago. Also, what changes I've made have actually cost me absolutely nothing, because I've become a real miserable person for spending money. So you can laugh at it all you want, it puts money in my pocket. So if you don't spend it, you don't have to make it, and that's the way within the cattle business. It's all about not having a high cost. So I started questioning the conventional methods and why I am where I am. Our animal deaths, we started having animal deaths that were just very, very odd. And I put it down to the fact that we're just intensification of nutrient status of the farm. Like when you start seeing animals dying of nitrogen poisoning and that, it's not a nice thing to see, and it's all down to management. It's your screw up, so it kind of resonates with you more so. Last year, I had a freshly reseeded 15-acre field of grass, and this really drove it home to me. At the end of that field, there's about an acre of rough grazing bog, and I stuck in my new calves. So they're maybe 4 months old, off milk, and they spent the first 3-4 days inside in the rough grazing, just eating all whatever crap was in there that hadn't been grazed in a couple of years. And it was only when they did all that eating, they went back to eat what I had thought was perfect green grass. So they were telling me something that what I was supplying with wasn't what they wanted. Financial management, I was working very, very hard to make the amount of money I was making, and I didn't consider I was making enough for the labour input I was putting in. The labour demand, I had one guy employed on and off, and just to have a guy employed, you have to run a lot of extra capital just to pay for that person. And I didn't think it was sustainable. My system, able to employ someone, and I wasn't happy going up in numbers just to have more numbers to be able to pay the wage to the guy. And from a cropping point of view, I was learning when we do fight nature, there's only one winner, and a big part of my crops was growing maize and sugar beet, and that was just to feed the animals. And anyone that's grown maize, it's the most disastrous crop in the world to grow because you absolutely destroy the soil at harvest time. It's a nightmare. You destroy the headlands, and it's only the following year when you try to grow a crop again in the headlands, you see that you spend €1,000 trying to grow a crop in these headlands and you're growing nothing. So there's no point trying to fight nature. So one of the things I started doing was I started putting all the headlands in grass, and it was just a cheap way out. It allowed me to correct the soil by applying compost and that during the growing season, and I wasn't spending huge amounts of money trying to get this perfect even crop across the fields just to make it look good for myself, because every farmer likes to look into a field and it's bang on even, and if you've got damaged soil, it ain't going to be even no matter what you do. Okay, this is just a slide I grabbed from Costello Seeds. Just gives you an indication of the mineral content and the decline in meat over the last 50 years, and it's pretty bloody stark, like where we've got to. It's not very clear now because I didn't do the PowerPoint presentation perfectly. But you can, if you go on Costello Seeds website, you'll pull up all these pictures. And you can see there the plants here to the right hand side. All the deep rooters that I had none of. I had all perennial ryegrasses. I was even so smart, maybe even had no clovers in some of the ground because we just supply nitrogen. I don't know what my thinking was, but we had a lot of stands that were just perennial ryegrass. So we had to see where I could try and start changing the whole system. So started with soil. The most important thing I thought from the very beginning, probably from growing maize, was I'd stop burning carbon. And maize is probably one of the best crops you could ever grow to burn carbon because the soil is probably bare for 7 months of the year. I aim to try and have a soil cover at all times, which that's what we're all trying to do. Living root always in the soil and try and build the OM as quick as possible. Try to turn my farmer manure into compost. I think that's very important. Grow cover crops, that's in the wrong place, but anyway. Import more carbon for composting, and this is a big problem for composting, is we just cannot get enough carbon onto the farm or at a competitive price. And I had to try and aim to provide animals with a balanced nutrition from the soil. So if we can have a healthier soil, we have a healthier animal that's able to fight off infection from whatever is attacking it. So that was the soil side of things. Organic manures, I consider slurry to be absolutely a horrendous product. I think it's mental that we spend so long during the year with diesel net ferrying around a product that's 95% water and it's 5% slurry, so that something's going to have to be done. But anyway, for my application rates, I reduced them all to 1,500 gallons per acre. We were going out to maybe 3,000-4,000 gallons just to get rid of it, but now I probably try and cover every acre, maybe 1,500 gallons, and maybe come back a second time if I have got still slurry left. We're treating the slurry with humates or anything beneficial. The humates are absolutely brilliant for reducing the smell of slurry, and we're just putting them in a mixing time. Okay, they're all also having the double impact of coating the nitrogen, so it's a two-pronged approach. Now I can't say how much of a difference having the humates mixed in the slurry from an end point of view is, because it's very hard to quantify it. The farmer manure, we windrowed and composted. I had a lot of farm manure, mostly straw based, but of all that farm manure, the carbon nitrogen ratio is it's completely bonkers nitrogen, because I'm coming from a high grain feeding system. So as I go back to saying, to get enough carbon on the farm is difficult enough. Now I am getting sawdust from horse stables, but it's tough to get enough carbon to be able to compost properly. Now if we do get enough carbon, and we do the carbon nitrogen ratio proper, maybe 20:1, it becomes very, very easy to make compost. It doesn't require as much turning at all. Time is probably our biggest issue when we have to work within the limitations of the nitrates directive. Unfortunately, the longer we could leave mature compost lying around, the better. It just improves with time, but we have to try and aim, well, we're supposed to have everything spread for the 1st of November. So it's something that needs changing. I don't think it's going to happen, but definitely if we make proper compost, there's no running off it. There should be no reason why it can't be stored for another 6 months and applied during the growing season. We had an aim to try and apply less than 4 tonnes per acre of compost. That is kind of as low as possible as I can see the current machinery being able to do. I had a machine last week that can go lower, but we're just not getting the spread rates even from hedge to hedge. We're just having too much of a headland spread where there's only half rate. So maybe if you've like 50-acre fields, it would work perfect. You get down to 2 tonnes per acre, but not with 5-6 acre fields. You just have to have a machine that can only spread maybe at 9 to 12 metres, that has got an even spread over that area. I've tried to tailor the compost for the soil's needs. So if I got low magnesium, I try to mix some dolomite lime. I'm hoping to try and start mixing some sulphur with it. The idea was to use some element sulphur, which takes a long time. It was very stable in the soil, but takes a long time to be activated. But if I could activate it in the compost for maybe 6 months to a year, that the minute it would hit the ground and I spread the compost, it would be readily available to the plant. So there's compost was spread maybe 2 weeks ago, before the 1st of November. It looks a bit wet there because it was just a little lump I picked up, but that's what it's kind of broken down to. There's pretty bare grassland it was spread on. Well, I can spread fully matured compost on grass and graze it in a couple of weeks, not a bother. So that's why I have no problems spreading it during the summer time. I know the ideal time to spread compost is going into winter, before a wet season, and you just allow time for it to break down. So November or October is probably the ideal time to be spreading it, but I'm trying to grow as much grass as possible with the nutrients I have, so that's why I'm looking at be spreading it in the middle of summer. The chemicals applied to the soil. Now, I was a very intensive beef farmer, so I'm go back 4 years ago, maybe 200, 250 units of nitrogen per acre. I got that back this year to 60 units per acre. It would have been lower, but in September I just had to go and spread another 25 units of nitrogen because we had such a deficit in feed. I can't be trying to save the planet every day, so we just have to grow enough feed to have enough there. So in future going forward, my aim is to spread about 30 units on average an acre, applied as a liquid, applied with humates, micronutrients. I probably don't need compost extracts, but it'll be a full liquid and probably going maybe 4 or 5 units per acre, just as kind of a kick on for plants and that. It won't actually be, I don't think it's actually going to, that amount of nitrogen is actually going to grow an awful lot. It'll just be kind of a stimulant. I'd have no problem going back to organic in time to come, but I don't think that's where I'm heading at the moment. And I have to sort my calcium magnesium ratios because my magnesium is still wrong. I still lose a couple of cows with staggers every year, that's a management issue, but that has to be sorted. The herbicides, when I was using glyphosate, I use water conditioners, which I found that we could drag it down to about 33%. So we just reduced the rate of glyphosate, and with no effects whatsoever, just using a water conditioner. With grown beet, I was able to use biostimulants, and again, I was able to cut the conventional beet spray program by about 40%, which it was more so just the timing of it and that, and just more so observing what's going on in the field. Instead of going like I go on day 5, 10 and 15, I just like observe what was actually growing in the field when the blight weeds actually need to be sprayed and not just spraying to a recommendation. Okay. The other thing, fungicides, I started using a lot of seaweed extract, and I found that if you could use seaweed extract, it just made the plant so resilient to fungal attack. I actually don't think I need any fungicides when using kelp, or seaweed sprays. It's just something I found. Now maybe that's not true. I haven't pushed it hard enough, but I think in future, anytime we need a fungicide, I might just try kelp and see where we get. Now we get to the grasslands. We tried to diversify the grasslands works. We grew predominantly, we spent 10 years ripping out the old swarts and put in perennial ryegrasses. We were just doing everything by the book. We had to realise that, we did realise that we need to get deeper rooting species because we get very, very dry land, and we spend a lot of the summer with very little to graze because our soil is going dry and we just don't have deep enough rooting grasses. So I tried to include other species, legumes and herbs. I found Timothy grows absolutely brilliant in my land. It seems to be growing during the cold weather, during the hot weather it seems to be growing, and it's very, very noticeable. It always seems to be growing well. Cocksfoot for the rooting, fests, red and white clovers, plantain and chicory. We're trying to grow them maybe to try and pull up more nutrients that are down the soil that we haven't been able to access for the last few years, and hoping that it will just give a more rounded diet to the cattle. Just looking at roots, there is a crop of grass and peas sown together on your right hand side from the springtime, and there is it after about maybe 6 weeks. You can see how tiny the little root grass is, but the pea grass has probably gone to about 4 inches. And if I go on, the picture on the left is what we were like in the middle of summer, completely burnt off, and the picture on the right is the pea and grass mix. Now, it was the only field, I'd say in the parish, a couple of fields that were just completely and utterly green, so there was some sort of a symbiotic relationship going between the peas and grass. There were obviously, the peas were fixing in, but also for the grass seems to be getting more moisture. Why, I'm not too sure, but it was working together, and I couldn't believe how green them fields stayed the whole way through the drought. The fields on the left hand side is typical of the rest of my farm. It just burnt up to a crisp, and I just thought the difference in it was absolutely huge. Now, I was only looking at YouTube of Christine Jones recently, and she was saying about the depths of plants, and she said if we had to double the depth, we literally farm double the acre of our soil just by doubling the depth for our root zone. And I can see where she's coming from. So that's what I'm trying to achieve. Here's a slide that Robbie robbed off me yesterday and put up. You can see all the different rooting capabilities of the plants. Perennial ryegrass is the third plant from the left, and it's a little tiny root. So if we can include everything, intertwine everything, we're just going to have a much more balanced diet for the animal. And now from the animals, this is what we've done. I consider animals to be a link between myself and the soil. So if there's an issue with the soil, I see the animals are my link people to tell me there's an issue. So we got away from routine procedures. Nothing galls me more than nowadays seeing some guy picture in the paper and he's going dosing for week number 3 and week number 7. A lot of it's completely unneeded. So for insecticide, for lice and that, we were broad spectrum. We treat every animal as they came in. We started not treating them, and we realised that maybe for finish up, we were actually only treating about 5% of cases that needed to be treated. So reduced that by about 90%. Fluke and stomach worms, we just kept an eye on our slaughter sheets to see if there was any issues with fluke, and there wasn't. It was very easy to pick out the animals that were showing up with fluke. It was just stockmanship. Stomach worms, I don't find them much of a problem at all. But the major problem we do have is lungworms, and it's a major issue for me, and it's something we're going to have to try and sort out. I think most of my issues are coming from maybe all them convenient fields that are around the farmyard that are probably they're just fields that are constantly occupied by animals. So I probably have to go against my normal ways of thinking. It's probably just going to have to plough and till them and try and reduce the lungworm burden and start afresh on them fields. That's, as far as I know, that's the only way I can go forward at this point. Even though we have cut 50% of our dosing for lungworms, we do dose the young calves between 0 and 1, maybe 3 times, but we're not doing any lungworm dosing for the animals over 1 year of age. So we're building some resistance, but I have mortalities they are coming from lungworms. So when I'm trying to push resistance, there is some few animals have to die. That's just what's happening at the moment. There is animals dying from lungworms, and it's only when you get the post-mortem done, you see like what the little calves were trying to fight off with a lungworm infection. Our vaccines, I've cut them by 50% because I found a lot of them weren't doing very, very little. I think that a lot of the pneumonia strains were actually only coming on board when there was a lungworm infection. So if we can try through lungworms, I don't think we have such a need for a high vaccination program. Now that goes against what most thinking is nowadays, it's vaccinate. But I don't buy it. I don't think it's the way to go. And also we found the less animals that went through the cattle crush resulted in lower mortality rates. After our TB tests, we'd usually have a death within 24 hours for no reason. All our animals used to be going through the cattle crush before, and our mortality rates lowered when we stopped putting them through the cattle crush. So you can just see how big a part stress plays with the animals. We have started intersowing into grass. That is just going back about 2 months ago. It was whatever seeds I'd left over, kind of just threw them all in the drill and direct drilled them in there. Just pieces of rape, I think, and just growing up through grass. And literally, rape will germinate anywhere and grow on. And I think rape is a big part to play in time to come because just the relationship it has with grass, and it stimulates grass growth, and it increases the protein content of the forage for the cattle. So the issues with my new system, I don't know why I put in the first two things because that's not really related to biological farming, but indirect drilling I had a lot of failure. I started off with super success altogether. The first couple of jobs were brilliant, but then we started running into failures. But I'm not worried about failure. It's as long as I learn from it, it doesn't worry me whatsoever. The animal health issues, back to the lungworm, it's my major problem. It's the one problem I have. I'm going to have to design a system some way to beat it. But where I'm going to go for advice and what I have to do, I'm not 100% sure, but it has to be sorted. My mortality rates are still too high. In a feedlot or in a buying animal system, we're trying to have mortality rates maybe about 1.25%. And this has not dropped off, and I was hoping it would drop off, but it hasn't. It's just remained stubbornly high at 1.25%. Going back to the lungworms, maybe we might try and come from it maybe by increasing the copper levels in the diet, maybe using copper sulfate, and hope that the lungworms maybe are targeted in the stomach before they burrow through into the lungs. So I don't know if that will work, but we're going to have a multi-pronged approach to try and sort how it's going to be fixed. And the last one is probably learning to live with nature's untidy ways. It doesn't bother me, but it drives my mum mad. She's constantly on about cutting hedges, and the place looks untidy, but look, that's just nature. In conclusion, look, we have to be making money. There's no point us trying to save the world for not making money. We have to have money in our pockets. It gives us courage and confidence to go on and make changes. I'm a heavily borrowed farm, and I have to sit in front of the bank manager every year, and he's to do his appraisal. He's probably been to 2 Chagas events throughout the year, and that's what he works off. So to take the leap into the unknown in biological farming, it's hardish enough to do when you owe so much money at the end of the year. I don't think the bank manager wants to hear you on about doing wacky stuff. He just wants you doing conventional because they know that's what works. observation is key. Go back about 5 years ago, I hired a stockman because I was just so busy, and just looking back now, it just goes to show how out of touch I was with farming. I was very, very busy. I thought it was the proper thing to do, but I got away from the basic principles of being a stockman or being of a farmer or having animals. So just the leaning on the gate, listening to cattle coughing, just seeing if animals are full, whatever, it's the most important part of the job. How far I am along the biological path, I don't know, because I don't know how far we can push it. Now, I'm a spreadsheet person, so I'm every day analysing scenarios and that. So I do whatever pays on paper I do. So I just pick and choose some parts of whatever system suits me that's going to work for me, and I just include in what I do. When I do look back at one of the hard years I was working, I was of the opinion I was just so busy, I was in such a rush, and I hadn't time to make money. That's what I thought anyway. And if you're in a rush, you will never make money at farming or probably at any business. That is the end of mine.